My name is David. My father used to deliver newspapers to people's homes early in the morning on his bicycle, and with the money he earned, he used to treat his elderly wife. One day, my mother told my father that he couldn't handle the hard work anymore and asked him to leave her alone to her fate, saying death was inevitable anyway. But my father went so far as to even beg from others for her treatment. Seeing all this, I started speaking ill of my father. One day, frustrated, I took my parents to an old age home. Just then, I received a phone call. My friend said, "David, have you met your father? Tell him to give me a job in his factory." I was shocked to hear that. I said, "What nonsense are you talking? How could my father possibly own a factory?" He laughed and said, "Dude, what world are you living in? Don't you know your father, Mr. John, has become a well-known name in the city?" I couldn't believe him and brushed off his words. But one day, when I saw my father sitting in a big car, I was stunned and couldn't believe my eyes. How could he have become so successful? I had left him in an old age home. When I went there to meet him, the scene left me shaken. It was early morning, cool wind was blowing. Though it was summer, last night's rain had made the weather pleasant. As I stepped out of my room, I heard a voice behind me, "David." I turned and saw it was Dad. I said, "Yes, Dad, what do you want to say?" He said, "Son, your mom isn't feeling well. Please take her to the doctor." I looked at my watch and said, "Dad, I'm getting late. I just took her to the doctor last week. Can't you go?" He replied, "I have to deliver newspapers early and then go to the newspaper factory in the afternoon. Can't you spare a little time for your mom? You often take leave from work." I snapped and said, "What do you mean by that? Have you ever seen me taking leave?" He said, "Don't misunderstand me. I meant your mom's health is not good. If you can't take her, at least get her medicine. She has a heart condition and missing even a single dose can worsen her health." I said, "Fine, give it to me." Dad handed me the prescription. I said, "Dad, you know how low my salary is. Her medicine costs 4,000 Indian rupees a week, 16,000 Indian rupees a month. I can't even manage household expenses. How can I buy her medicine? I'm fed up with this mess. Earlier you used to earn something, but now you've stopped everything." He said, "I still work, but selling newspapers doesn't earn much." I said, "You always say that and try to escape. Tell me, how much more should I suffer alone?" Hearing this, he quietly took the prescription back, folded it, put it in his coat pocket, and with a deep sigh, pulled out his old bicycle from the storeroom and started fixing it. The tires were low on air. He pushed it out and got the tires filled, then went out to buy and sell newspapers. I quietly went to work. Dad had started the newspaper job just a few days ago. Initially, it was going well because people loved reading newspapers and they were the main source of news. But in today's social media era, reading newspapers had almost disappeared. Dad had even quit the job at one point. But due to rising household problems and stress, he had restarted it, though it wasn't doing well. Sometimes he'd go, sometimes he wouldn't. Now, most people get their news on mobile. Only a few still like reading newspapers, and thanks to those few, Dad would earn a little. Sometimes he sold nothing, sometimes just a bit. Nowadays, social media is everything, not newspapers. That day too, Dad went around selling newspapers and made about 300 Indian rupees. He took the prescription to the medical store. The pharmacist looked at the prescription, then at Dad, and said, "Sir, this medicine is very expensive. You'll only get one pill for this much, enough for one dose." Dad said, "Okay, give me just one pill. My wife's health is not good." He wiped his sweat, it was summer and he was now old. Cycling made him breathless. He had somehow fixed his old cycle himself, but it couldn't last long. His legs pained a lot from all the walking to deliver newspapers, which caused many problems. Tired and with minimal newspaper sales, he gave up again. But when I refused to bring the medicine, he had no choice but to pull out his cycle again and fix it. This was a phase in his life where he had a lot of expectations from his children, but we kept breaking his heart. By the time he got home with the medicine, he was badly gasping for breath. He gave the medicine to my mom and said, "Take this." Mom, whose health had worsened due to missing the dose, said, "Where did you get this?" David had clearly refused. Dad said, "I started working again and earned a little money. Selling newspapers brings at least some cash. Better than sitting idle at home. Today I earned 300 Indian rupees, so I bought your medicine. I know it's not the full course, but it's all I could afford. Your medicine is too expensive." Then he turned to his grandson, my son, and said, "Son, can you give me some water?" My son, Michael, got water from the cooler and gave it to him. Dad blessed him, stroking his head. I was too busy with work. I didn't know how much effort my father had to put in to arrange for Mom's medicine. When my son was receiving blessings from his grandfather, all of this was being watched by my wife, Natasha, as she stood at the door. Her forehead was tense with anger, and she began muttering under her breath. Just because he wanted to get medicine, he fixed up his old bicycle and started selling newspapers again. The son has no sense at all. Doesn't he know how hard David works to earn money? He has his own family too, a wife and kids. But no, these people only care about themselves. My husband works under the scorching sun, then manages the household expenses. There is no humanity left in these people. Then she stepped forward and told Michael to go study and stay in his room. She warned him never to come into that room again, reminding him that his grandmother's health is not good and that being around her might make him sick too, which would increase David's burden even more. He's already taking care of so many people. She told him to go turn on the fan in his room and sit there, saying there's no need to serve these two. Natasha said this while glaring at my mother and father. My parents heard it all silently. Michael kept looking at his mom's face, then quietly went into his room. I had only 2 sons, one was 10-year-old Kevin and the other was 8-year-old Michael. I used to work in a small company. My salary was decent. But Natasha never liked me spending money on my parents. Our marriage wasn't love-based, in fact, it was my mother who had chosen Natasha for her only son. I loved my parents deeply. They raised me well and gave me education up to high school from their hard-earned money. My father did a lot for me, even celebrated my wedding grandly. But when Natasha came into the house, she started poisoning my mind against my parents. She always spoke badly about them, never once praised them. She'd always say that I was alone and my parents didn't care about me, that they dumped all responsibilities on me. At first, I thought she was wrong, but after constantly hearing such things, it started sinking into my mind that maybe she was right. If I'm married and earning now, then why is my dad putting everything on me? Can't he do something himself? Just like he looked after me all his life, why can't he continue? Why is he after my money now? Life was somehow moving along. Natasha never wanted to do anything for my parents. Even when she made food for her father-in-law, she grumbled the whole time. She hated serving them, doing their chores, or even living in the same house as them. I knew this very well. But she was the mother of my children, took care of me, and worried for me, so I never said anything to her. Whenever she did any work for my parents, she'd complain about being exhausted and said she couldn't manage their work. She expected my mother to do some household chores, but my mother was sick, how could she do any work? When she was healthy, she used to do all the household work by herself. But Natasha still had issues with her, even when she was managing everything. From the beginning, my parents tolerated all of Natasha's behavior. Now, my mother's health had worsened even more. The doctor had strictly advised her not to walk much or do any work. Still, she would try to help out, like cutting vegetables, kneading dough, or even sewing. Natasha only had to cook food or make chapatis, but every day as soon as I came back from office, she would start crying and complaining that my mother does nothing, and my father just sits and adds to the mess. She'd say she has to do everything alone. She'd say since the doctor's orders, my mother has taken a vow to do nothing, and now everything falls on her. I would respond that there's nothing I can do. I'm already exhausted from office. I need a peaceful home, some cool water, and tea to reduce my headache. But instead, I hear new complaints every day. I didn't have time to listen to arguments. I told her to do what she felt was right. If she felt like working, do it. If not, then don't, but stop ruining my peace every day. That's how I would escape Natasha. She eventually convinced me not to bring medicine for my mother, and that's exactly what happened. When I refused to bring the medicine, Dad never again asked me to do it. Nor did he ask me to take Mom to the doctor. He started working hard himself, selling newspapers, never complaining about their problems. Fate had mercy on him when 3 or 4 people agreed to buy newspapers from him, old customers who still loved reading headlines in the paper. Dad seemed happy again. Every morning he would leave without breakfast to sell newspapers, going to 5 or 6 houses, requesting people on the move, saying my wife is unwell. I need to buy her medicine. For God's sake, please buy a newspaper. Have some pity on me. Some would feel sorry and buy one. With that money, he would bring medicine for Mom every day. One day when he came home, Natasha's mood was already off. She never liked my parents, and seeing Dad working made her even more upset. Her aim was that my parents should manage their expenses themselves and not rely on her husband's income. Natasha said, "Dad, there's no food in the house. Nothing will be cooked until we have groceries." Dad replied, "Why didn't you tell us, dear? I would have brought some." She shouted, "What do you think my husband is, a walking machine that keeps working all day? He just brought your wife's medicine. Only 200 Indian rupees are left. We have our own expenses too. Go sit in your room and enjoy the fruits of your son's earnings because your son is too sympathetic towards his parents. The little money he had, he bought fruit for your wife, and now you expect groceries too? Everything is not my husband's responsibility. If you're working so hard, then take responsibility for the house too. I haven't been given any money today. What am I supposed to cook?" Natasha was upset that I brought fruits for my sick mom. In that anger, she didn't cook anything that day. Dad went silent hearing her words. There was embarrassment in his eyes. He knew from the beginning that Natasha had a sharp tongue, so what could he say to her? He lowered his eyes and started walking away, but he was extremely hungry. He paused for a minute and said, "Daughter-in-law, please check the kitchen. Make some lentils and rice, anything. I'm hungry too, and your mother-in-law also needs her medicine. She can't take it on an empty stomach." I only had enough money to bring her medicine. Natasha replied, "If you care so much for your wife, you should think a little about us too. Do you only earn for your wife's medicines? Sometimes bring things for the household too. Sometimes buy something for your grandsons. Okay, I'm not your real daughter, just a daughter-in-law, forget about me. But the grandkids are your blood." Hearing this, my mom, who was standing at the door, immediately gave Natasha the fruit I had brought and said, "Daughter-in-law, don't be angry. Here, take these fruits and give them to the children." Natasha quickly grabbed the fruit bag and walked away. But when Dad went into the room, he saw an apple on the table. Mom had cut the apple and placed it before him and said, "Please eat something. I saved this for you. I know you're tired and hungry. You work so hard." Dad replied, "No, you eat. The doctor has advised you to eat fruits. I don't need these things." That same evening when I returned home, I saw nothing had been cooked. So I advised my wife and kids to get ready. I said, "Come, I'll drop you at your grandma's place. Nothing will be cooked here unless I pay." I took my wife and kids to my in-laws' house. Meanwhile, my parents sat at home hungry. Dad went to the kitchen to look around and saw that everything was available, lentils, rice, flour, but Natasha had purposely cooked nothing. Dad quickly asked Mom and started making lentils as he was very hungry and also worried about Mom's medicine. On one side he kept the lentils to cook and on the other side, he began kneading the dough with his own hands. He somehow managed to make oddly shaped rotis, because the doctor had advised against outside food for Mom. So after cooking, when he fed his wife with his own hands, just then the front door opened. I entered with my wife and kids. Seeing Dad feed Mom lentils and roti, I frowned and walked into my room. When we were all inside, Natasha angrily said, "See what your father is doing? He loves your mother so much that he cooked with his own hands and is feeding her. And you? You don't love me at all. You only care about your parents." I snapped, "What are you saying? I've even stopped bringing medicine for Mom. Right now, using your family visit as an excuse, I fed you all at a hotel. What happened now if Dad cooked for Mom?" Natasha said, "Oh really? Have you ever cooked anything for me? Not even a cup of tea? I spend my entire day working in this house like a servant and caring for everyone, and you never even thought to learn something from your parents." I rolled my eyes and said, "Fine, I'll learn all that. But will you go earn in my place? Don't mess with my head." Saying this, I adjusted my pillow and went to sleep. My words hurt Natasha deeply, and she sat there crying, thinking her husband doesn't care for her at all. Natasha said, "My brother has sent me some money. It's so hot this summer. I get dizzy cooking in the kitchen. There's no airflow inside either. I'm thinking of buying an AC with the money he sent." I moved my arm from over my eyes and said, "And who's going to pay the AC bill? Your dad? Listen clearly, I don't earn enough to afford an AC bill. You know how expensive electricity is." She replied, "Then throw it on your dad. If he can bring medicine for your mom, why can't he pay the bill? Anyway, the doctor has told your mom to stay in a cool place. The courtyard only gets better in the evening. She too sweats all day. If we have an AC in our room, your mom can lay her bed in the same room too." I found this reasonable. So the next day, I spoke to Dad. I said, "Dad, Natasha's brother has sent her some money. It's very hot these days. He's suggesting we buy an AC for our room, and Natasha wants that too. You and Mom can also stay in our room. The doctor has told her to avoid the heat." Dad was happy to hear this and said, "If that's the case, go ahead." I said, "I can get it installed, but you know my salary isn't that much. I can barely manage household expenses. I can't pay the electricity bill. But if you can save up enough from selling newspapers to pay the bill, then I'll get the AC. After all, it'll benefit Mom too." Hearing this, Dad looked at me closely, as if he hadn't expected those words from me. He knew very well that I earned a good salary because every Sunday I took my family out, except my parents. We'd even eat out, and Dad never questioned me. Nor did I ever think to take something for my parents or bring them along. If there was leftover food from outside, I'd get it packed and give it to them. But I never brought them anything specifically. Dad said, "Son, how can I pay the bill? I barely managed to collect enough money for your mom's medicine. And now you've clearly said that even that's not your responsibility." I said, "Just like you managed to collect money for Mom's medicine, do the same for the bill. Mom will benefit from the AC anyway. My wife is already giving money for the AC. I don't care. The AC will be installed and you will pay the bill." Now David's father had no choice but to agree with him. He started working harder than before. But newspapers didn't sell much, so he began doing labor work as well. But he was weak and old, couldn't do much, because he never made David do labor. He spent his whole life selling newspapers and working hard to give his son a good education at a good school, and David had a good job. David could afford his mother's medicines, but at Natasha's insistence, he had refused. Natasha always reminded David that he should learn from his father who, even at his age, takes such good care of his wife. She would say, "And look at you. You don't care for me at all." When David's father became too exhausted and things became too hard, he began begging. He told everyone, "I don't have money for my wife's medicines. Please help me for God's sake." People helped him, and he would buy medicines for his wife and also pay the electricity bill for the AC. One day, David was partying with his friends at a restaurant and saw his father begging outside that same restaurant. His friends saw him too, as they knew David's father well. One friend asked, "Isn't that your father? What is he doing? Another said, "Oh my God, he's begging." A third said, "What a shame. You have a good job, a high post, and your father is begging outside." David was ashamed in front of his friends and internally angry at his father, thinking he was doing it on purpose to humiliate him so David would be forced to start paying for the medicines and the AC bill. He could afford everything: medicines, bills, household expenses, but he couldn't do it under Natasha's pressure, who always created drama and taunted him. That night, David came home and said angrily to his father, "You were begging on purpose at the same restaurant where I was with my friends. They mocked me because of you. If you ever do this again, see what I'll do to both of you." His wife was also fueling his anger, saying, "Your father has ruined your reputation. You can't even face the world now." David's mother cried that night and begged his father to stop doing this for her sake. She said she's going to die anyway and doesn't want to see him suffer. She told him that the doctor had already given up hope, and she didn't want to be a burden. David's father had tears in his eyes. He said, if our son wanted, he could take care of all the household expenses. But he won't, because he's become a slave to his wife. He only listens to her. He doesn't care about his parents. If I don't care for you, who will? I'll keep working, and if needed, I'll beg, because our son's wife can't tolerate that I buy medicines for you. A week later, David's father was asking someone for help to take his wife to the doctor for a follow-up that cost $200, which he couldn't afford. He had taken up a newspaper route and asked a client there for financial help. That man told him, "This is my son's office," and handed him a card and said, "Go ask him, he will help you. I don't have money right now." Happy, David's father rode his bike to the office, not knowing that David worked there. When he went to ask David's boss for money, the boss recognized him. He called David into his cabin, scolded him, and said, "You have a good salary, and yet your father came to me begging to pay for your mother's treatment? Shame on you." David was humiliated. That day, he came home and pushed his father to the ground in anger. His mother clutched her chest and cried, "What are you doing to your father?" Natasha stood to the side enjoying the scene. David yelled at his father, "If I lose my job, who will feed Natasha and the kids? Why did you go to my office? You embarrassed me in front of my boss. Have you no shame?" His father said, "Son, I know your salary is very good. You hide your money from me. You have enough to take your wife and kids on outings, but when it comes to your parents, you cry poor. I'll still treat my wife, even if I have to beg. If you don't care about your mother, let me do what I must." David yelled, "Oh really? Let's see how you do it." His father stood up and said, "Let's see how you stop me. I'm your father. Enough is enough. I've had enough of your behavior." Hearing that, David pushed him hard again. His father fell and hit his head. His mother rushed over and cried, "Aren't you ashamed of humiliating your father?" David replied, "No, I'm not. If I lose my job because of him, you'll see what I'll do to both of you." Natasha stood there, enjoying the drama. She took advantage of the moment and said, "Why don't you just throw your parents out of the house? Drop them off at an old age home. They'll cover their expenses there. Even get full medical care." Strangely, I found Natasha's advice to be absolutely right. I had seen the tears in my parents' eyes, filled with silent pleas, as if begging me not to do this. But I could no longer tolerate the humiliation. Natasha's suggestion seemed sensible. I immediately called for a cab, made my parents sit inside, and loaded their belongings too. Perhaps they had discussed something between themselves, which is why they remained silent and left quietly. I gave the cab driver the address of the old age home and paid the fare. The driver dropped my parents off there. Natasha was very pleased with all this. She said, "You did the right thing. At least now you won't be publicly shamed anymore." My parents began living in the old age home. After that, I never looked back or checked on them, how they were, what their condition was. My salary was completely managed by Natasha. Now she started buying expensive clothes for the kids. One day she went to a religious gathering at her relative Linda's house. There, an elderly woman spoke about the importance of elders in the home, how parents or in-laws are a blessing, and their presence brings prosperity. But these words had no effect on Natasha. Instead, when she came home, she said, "All of that is nonsense. You didn't do anything wrong. Your parents were trying to ruin your reputation. Your father went begging to your boss to get you fired." She'd told everyone that I had sent my parents to California for a vacation. When I told this to my boss, he was pleased. Natasha began inviting her family over often and cooking special meals for them. She even called over her friends. My real shock came when I lost my job. My boss told me, "We've found a younger, better guy, and in 3 months, he's delivered more than you did in 3 years." I was devastated. My savings were gone. I wasn't highly educated, just completed high school, but had secured this job by luck. Though not academically strong, I was intelligent. But now even that didn't help. Natasha was distressed. She asked her brother Steve for money, but he refused, saying, "I gave you money recently. I bought you an air conditioner too. I can't keep giving you handouts. I have my own family. I tried hard to get another job, but nothing came up. Not even for a small role. Things were so bad we had to sell Natasha's jewelry." She cried a lot because she had saved for those ornaments from my salary, money that used to be spent on my mom's medicine. Natasha would buy whatever she liked from the jeweler. Now all that had to be sold just to run the household. We even sold the air conditioner. We were so broke. I never realized that maybe all this was happening because I had broken my parents' hearts, thrown them out. I didn't even know how they were doing. One day I told my friend Jack, "Please help me get a job somewhere." 2 days later, he called and said, "Why are you so stressed? Why don't you go to your father? He owns a big factory now." I thought he was joking. I didn't believe him. We didn't even have food at home. Natasha said her mom called, offering to lend some money for a few days but asked us to return it soon. She said her mom had already helped a lot. There was nothing at home to eat. Natasha said, "Go get the money from mom or we'll have to sleep hungry tonight." Her parents lived far from us. I was ready to go, but didn't even have enough money for the bus fare. Then I noticed my dad's old, broken bicycle, the one he used to deliver newspapers. I pulled it out and began riding toward Natasha's house. Suddenly, I noticed a big blue luxury car. My father was inside, wearing an expensive suit. He looked nothing like the man I had known. Same face, but a transformed aura. I tried shouting, but he didn't hear me. The car went far ahead. I started chasing it on the bicycle. I couldn't believe how he had changed. I thought I'd left him at the old age home. I wasn't imagining it. When I followed the car to a large mansion, my mind went blank. My father stepped out and walked into the bungalow. I stood there watching. I wanted to go inside, but the guard stopped me and said, "Sir just returned from the factory and doesn't want to meet anyone right now." I turned around to leave but couldn't rest. So I immediately turned my bicycle toward the old age home. I reached there and knocked on the door so that I could find out about my parents. After going there, I found out that my parents were not present there. They had left 4 months ago. The people there told me that a team of people had come searching for them, spoke to my dad, and took both of them with them. I couldn't understand. I tried to extract more information from the old age home staff, but it was of no use. I wanted to know more about my father, how he had achieved so much success. How did he get so lucky? Since the day I was born, I had only seen my parents living in poverty. My father used to sell newspapers to make ends meet. So how did all this change? I returned home and started blaming my wife Natasha. I said, "Do you know, today I saw Dad sitting in a big car like some owner?" When I went to the old age home, they told me they weren't even there anymore. Natasha replied, "That's not possible. Your parents have been at the old age home for 6 months. How could they become so rich in that short time?" I said, "It's true. I saw Dad with my own eyes going into a big bungalow." My eyes can't lie. This is all your fault, you kept telling me to throw them out. If they were living with us and had become this successful, we would be enjoying life too. Natasha, feeling ashamed, said, "How was I supposed to know your parents would become rich?" I put my hand on my forehead and said, "I made a huge mistake listening to you. If my parents were here, I'd be rich too. But because of you, everything is gone." I knew I had to do something. The next day I took the bicycle again and went back to that bungalow to meet my father, and if needed, apologize, because my domestic condition was very bad. When I reached the door, I told the guard to inform the owner that his son David had come to meet him. The guard gave me a strange look, but when he went inside and informed my father, Dad called me in. When I entered, my eyes sparkled at seeing the house. It was my father's house. My mom, looking healthy, was sitting on the sofa, and Dad sat beside her with a cup of coffee in his hand. Servants were working in the house. Dad saw me and asked me to sit, and I sat on the opposite sofa. Mom looked at me lovingly. There was no anger on their faces, only love. I said, "Dad, please forgive me. I'm going through a really bad time." He said, "Oh, so your bad days have started. That's why you remembered your parents now. Otherwise, your mom's medicine used to be so expensive for you." Dad continued, "God heard my prayers. The barren land we had was given life again. It is now worth millions. That land, near the river, which the government had seized, was returned to us. The survey officials came to the neighborhood and found out you had left us in an old age home. So they came searching for us and told us they wanted to buy our land. That land, which was once worth thousands, sold for millions. I sold it, took the money, invested half in starting an oil factory, and used the other half to build this big, new home. Now we have our own house. We don't need yours. And I'm getting your mom treated by top doctors. I don't need you, son. God gave us everything. I only needed your mom. But I heard you're in trouble. As a father, I'll make sure you have groceries at home so that you don't feel I didn't support you in your bad times. Because you are my child and always will be. But you forgot that we are your parents. Parents give birth to their children, raise them, and if the child makes mistakes, they forgive them. But grown-up children twist even the right actions of their parents into mistakes." I quickly touched Dad's feet and said, "Please forgive me. I am so ashamed." Dad said, "Yes, son. I know. God has made you realize your mistakes. But forgive me, I can only help you while staying in this house. I cannot come to your house, and I cannot let you come to mine. Because the true nature of children is revealed in their parents' old age." I asked for forgiveness over and over again. I asked him to come with me to my house, but he refused. However, Dad did a lot for me. He gave me a job in his factory, arranged groceries for my home, paid my kids' school fees, and gave me some pocket money. But he never again accepted me as his son. I now live in regret, yearning for my parents. But the wounds I gave them, those may never heal. Friends, I hope you liked our story. If you did, please like the video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and don't forget to press the notification bell so you get the next update first.